In 1825, the 30th volume of the French scientific journal, Annals of Chemistry and Physics, published an article titled "Shooting Stars During Daytime," detailing a very intriguing incident that took place over southeastern France. The story goes as follows. On September 7, 1820, an annular solar eclipse occurred, and was seen by thousands of people across Europe, Greenland, North Africa, and the Middle East. What made this astronomical event different from the others was the sighting of a peculiar phenomenon during the eclipse, over the commune of Embrun, located in the department of Haute-Alpes. On that particular day, the sub-prefect of the city, Mr. John Joseph Serres, was watching the eclipse as were many other people. A few minutes later, he grew bored, and at 1:45 p.m., he decided to take a walk and wander through some fields, located near the city. The weather was nice, and the sky was partially cloudy. While walking through the city, he passed by a public square, where he noticed a huge crowd of people, looking at the direction of the sun. He didn't pay too much attention to them, thinking they were just watching the solar eclipse, and continued walking. A moment later, he encountered another group of people on a street, also looking at the sky. However, he quickly realized that it was impossible to observe the sun from the angle where they stood, indicating that they're watching something else happening in the sky. Mr. Serres recognized a man in the group, who's a veterinarian, named Mr. Tomé, and approached him to inquire about the situation.
Hi. What are you guys looking at?
We're watching the stars emerging from the sun.
What? What are you talking about?
Yes, you heard correctly. Take a look for yourself.
As Mr. Serres directed his gaze towards the sky, he witnessed what appeared to be globes of fire, the size of big stars, coming out of the northern hemisphere of the sun at an incredible speed. The fiery objects emerged as a group, at unequal and close intervals. Some of them moved in a straight line, then faded away, while others followed parabolic trajectories, before vanishing. Other globes, after crossing a certain distance in a straight line, stopped abruptly, and retrograded along the same path, then entered the solar disk, while still maintaining the same luminosity. The objects always maintained equal distances from each other. Their movements and formations were quite remarkable, and showed military precision. Mr. Serres stated that he had never seen such phenomenon before, and was completely mesmerized by the spectacle, just like everyone else who witnessed it. As the solar eclipse approached its end, and as the sun slowly regained its brightness, the fiery globes began emerging in much greater numbers. As the solar eclipse ended, the phenomenon stopped as well. On October 5, Mr. Serres wrote a detailed report about the incident, and sent it to the president of the French Academy of Sciences, Mr. Jacques-Noël Sanet. Because of the limited scientific understanding of meteors at the time, astronomers assumed that the observed phenomenon was a case of unusual shooting stars. But now that our understanding of the characteristics and behaviors of these celestial bodies has significantly advanced, it's now clear that what people saw that day was definitely not a meteor shower. The bizarre movements of the fiery globes are a dead giveaway, especially those that crossed a certain distance, then stopped and returned to the sun. Meteors never perform such maneuvers. The Embrun Incident of 1820 bears a striking resemblance to the famous celestial phenomenon of 1566, over Basel, in Switzerland. In both instances, the eyewitnesses described seeing fiery orbs, coming out of the sun, moving with great speed and precision, before finally fading away. I used to think that the Basel phenomenon, as well as the Nuremberg incident, were nothing more than pictorial fusions of several historical events and natural phenomena, unrelated to each other, and embellished by religious interpretations, and that the similarities were just coincidences. However, after delving deeper into history, I found numerous reports from across Europe, from different time periods, describing the exact same things. The discoveries revealed a clear pattern, leading me to the conclusion that these phenomena, whatever they are undeniably real, and not hallucinations, exaggerations, or fabrications. A few weeks ago, I came across two interesting accounts of humanoid encounters in Thailand in 1810, while reading this amazing book, by Jacques Vallée and Chris Aubeck, which presents reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, from antiquity until the 19th century. The information about these cases was mentioned in an article, titled, Alien Encounters in Southeast Asia, by Malaysian researcher, Ahmad Jamaluddin, which was published in October 1997, in the 17th issue of a British magazine, called Alien Encounters. Jacques Vallée noted that the stories were given without a precise original reference, so I decided to contact the Malaysian ufologist to request information about the cases. With the help of a researcher from the Magonia Research Group, I was able to obtain Mr. Jamaluddin's email address, and contacted him. He responded a few hours later, expressing his appreciation for my interest in the UFO phenomenon in Asia, and informed me that he came across the two cases in a magazine, called Ancient Astronauts. Ancient Astronauts, aka, Official UFO Special, Ancient Astronauts, was a 25-issue American magazine that was published from 1975 through 1980 by Countrywide Publications. The magazine was devoted to the ancient astronaut hypothesis, and also covered all kinds of unexplained events and Fortean phenomena. Mr. Jamaluddin told me that he couldn't remember which issue of the magazine mentioned the stories. Therefore, finding the original source is going to take some time, and I'll keep you updated on the progress of my investigation. Accompanying the letter was a document Mr. Jamaluddin had written in January 1997, in which he compiled UFO reports in Southeast Asia, from the early 1800s to 1996. This document hasn't been published on the internet, and contains dozens of fascinating cases, most of which are new to me. The cases were gathered by Mr. Jamaluddin from several UFO journals and magazines, and cover the following countries: Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Malaysia, Singapore, Brunei, Indonesia, and the Philippines. The oldest reports he was able to find were from Thailand, from 1810, and talked about a series of strange events that occurred in the vicinity of the Meklong River. The first incident occurred on the night of July 17, 1810, involving a British merchant ship, called HMS Nereid, which was moored in the vicinity of the river. While the captain, Augustus Tweed, was on watch, he witnessed a group of lights appearing in the eastern sky. The mysterious lights danced in the sky for a brief period of time, then flew away in circular motions. Two weeks later, the lights reappeared again. This time, they were observed by the captain and his crew, along with the ship's mate, Mr. Hogarth. After darting around in the sky for an undisclosed period of time, the mysterious lights vanished in plain sight. On August 9, the lights made one last appearance, and performed the same maneuvers in the sky. However, upon their departure, they merged into one large light, and plunged into the sea. This caused the ship to be hit by very strong waves, but thankfully, there were no casualties among the crew or damages to the ship. Everything returned to normal, and remained that way for a while, until August 28, when strange occurrences began happening in the area once again. On that day, Dr. Jacob Hazlitt, a missionary and physician, reported that while he was walking on a road near the Meklong River, he spotted in the distance what he thought was a man wearing strange clothes. When he got closer, he realized that the figure was an otherworldly being, with only one eye. The humanoid appeared to be made entirely of silver, and its skin gleamed when hit by sunlight. The entity then disappeared among some trees and bushes, leaving Dr. Hazlitt bewildered. A few days later, in September 1810, a local woman had a terrifying and unforgettable experience at night. While she was sleeping in her home, she was suddenly awoken in the middle of the night by what she described as an unknown force, and felt a supernatural presence in her bedroom. As she got up from her bed to investigate what was happening, she noticed that the forest was unusually quiet and devoid of animal and insect noises. Upon looking out of her bedroom's window, the lady beheld a strange creature in her backyard, gazing at her house. Her description of the entity's appearance is similar to that given by Mr. Hazlitt. Humanoid, with only one eye, and dressed in a suit, which seemed to be made out of metal. Suddenly, the woman found herself back in bed, with several hours of missing time. She had vague recollections of being taken by the entity to what she described as an underwater palace of lights. After this close encounter, there were no further reports of supernatural occurrences or sightings of UFOs in the area until the 1950s. Regarding the credibility of the stories, I couldn't find any information about Captain Augustus Tweed or Dr. Jacob Hazlitt. However, I did come across some scarce information on the internet, confirming the existence of the merchant ship. It's possible that the witnesses were just some regular and unremarkable people, that's why there's no information about them on the internet today. But that doesn't explain the absence of their names in old books, newspapers, and magazines from that time. Perhaps it's because I didn't search enough, or because the stories only appeared in a small or local newspaper. In conclusion, the credibility of these stories will remain uncertain, as long as the original source is unknown. To those watching this video, if you have a copy of the Ancient Astronauts magazine featuring these stories, please reach out to me through the email in the description. Your help in investigating the authenticity of these stories would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Over the past 2.5 years, almost 1,000 UFOs have been sighted across the UK, and according to data gathered by researchers, Yorkshire is the country's second most prolific hotspot region for UFO activity. The region is known for its fair share of all kinds of supernatural occurrences, with the port city of Hull, located in the East Yorkshire County, being one of the main UFO hotspots in the area. In November 2015, a local historian and author, by the name of Mike Covell, who's an expert in the paranormal history of Hull, made an interesting discovery that garnered national media attention for the city. While sifting through archived newspapers from the early 1800s, in search of reports of UFO sightings connected to the city of Hull, he discovered the first and oldest recorded UFO sighting in that city, dating back to June 1801, which was mentioned in several newspapers. At the time of the discovery, Mr. Covell was working for the Hull Daily Mail. His boss, who had a keen interest in the paranormal, and would often read publications like the Fortean Times, always encouraged him to write about these types of topics. When Mr. Covell presented the story to him, it was well received. However, the article he wrote about his discovery didn't get many views until his associate, Mark Brannigan, from the Daily Express, called and interviewed him about the story. This resulted in his finding going viral, and being covered by multiple British newspapers. What really annoys me about some of these articles is the claim that this is the oldest UFO sighting in the world, reflecting how ignorant their writers are about this subject. Another issue is that they contain a lot of misinformation. This article by the Daily Mail, shows a picture of unknown provenance, with a comment implying that it's a photographic evidence of the phenomenon, when in reality, photography wasn't invented until 2 decades later. Mr. Covell has confirmed to me that he hasn't found any photos of the UFO, and that he had no control over the layout and headlines of the articles, as well as the choice of images. Unfortunately, the damage has been done. And as you can see here, some websites have spread the misinformation as a fact, which will be accepted as truth by many UFO enthusiasts who believe everything they read on the internet, without fact-checking it. Anyway, back to the story. On June 19, 1801, between midnight and 1 o'clock in the morning, the inhabitants of the city of Hull observed an incredible phenomenon in the night sky, which suddenly appeared in the southwest, over the Humber. The phenomenon first appeared as an immense bright globe, much bigger than the moon, with what looked like a horizontal bar across its center. Its brightness bathed the entire city in a faint blue light. The object split into 7 small globes of fire, which then disappeared. A few seconds later, the phenomenon reappeared in its initial form, as bright as before, and slowly split into 5 small globes. Each of the 5 globes then divided into several smaller luminous objects, resembling bright stars, before gradually fading away. After the disappearance of the phenomenon, multiple witnesses reported feeling a deep sense of calm and serenity, and the sky remained brilliantly illuminated for a while, like a fine summer morning. The incident sparked significant discussion at the time, and received coverage in several newspapers, such as the Chester Chronicle, the Hull Packet, and the Northampton Mercury. However, just like many UFO cases predating 1947, the story was quickly forgotten, until its rediscovery, 2 centuries later. My initial thought when I first read about the case, was that the mysterious object might have been a misidentification of the moon, with the bar being an elongated cloud obscuring it. Something like this. However, after doing a little bit of research, I was able to rule out this possibility, using stellarium, and confirm that the moon was below the horizon during the sighting. My next hypothesis was that the object could have been a meteor that disintegrated upon entering Earth's atmosphere. But after hours and hours of internet searches, I couldn't find any articles or mentions of meteor sightings over East Yorkshire on that night. Apparently, the strange phenomenon was only seen by the inhabitants of Hull, with no reports of similar sightings in nearby villages and towns. This suggests that the phenomenon, whatever it was at a considerably low altitude in the sky, and in close proximity to the city. What do you think really happened that night? Was the UFO nothing more than a mundane man-made object or natural phenomenon? Or something else entirely? Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. In April 1815, weeks before Napoleon's defeat in the Battle of Waterloo, Mount Tambora, a volcano located on the island of Sumbawa, in Indonesia, erupted. It was one of the largest volcanic incidents ever recorded, and could be heard up to 1,600 miles off. Ash fell 800 miles away, and for 2 days following the eruption, the 350 miles surrounding the mountain were in pitch darkness. By the following year, a huge and dense cloud of minuscule sunlight-reflecting particles had entered the stratosphere, and was moving across much of the globe, disrupting the weather systems of the northern hemisphere. Moreover, the spreading dust cloud produced colorful sunsets and glowing twilight skies around the world. The year 1816 was known as the year without a summer, because of the severe climate abnormalities that resulted from the volcanic eruption. Average global temperatures dropped by over 0.7 degrees Celsius, making summer temperatures in Europe the coldest of any on record, between 1766 and 2000. This sudden climate shift caused widespread crop failures, epidemic diseases, and civil unrest on a catastrophic scale, across the Northern Hemisphere and the rest of the world. While it is now scientifically confirmed that the unusual weather that year and Mount Tambora's eruption are connected, it took until the 1970s for researchers to piece together the clues. Back in 1816, people blamed the sun for the unusual weather, as between May and June of that year, huge sunspots appeared on the surface of the sun. They were so large that they could easily be seen with the naked eye at sunset. The volcanic haze resulting from the eruption made it easier to observe the sunspots without eye protection, which led more people to notice the spots and connect them to the odd weather. These events sparked widespread doomsday panic, as people believed that the sun was about to extinguish. What fueled the apocalyptic frenzy even more were the predictions of an anonymous Italian astronomer from Bologna, who prophesied that the dark sunspots would gradually overwhelm the sun, and that on July 18, the sun would go out entirely, plunging the world into perpetual freezing darkness. While several newspapers attempted to calm public fears of the imminent end of the world, others backed up the claims of the anonymous astronomer, and explicitly described a connection between sunspots and weather patterns. As July 18 approached, the panic reached fever pitch, and riots broke out across Europe. In the end, July 18 came and went, and the sun continued to shine. Yet, the anxious mood persisted, and the following weeks and months proved to be extremely challenging. Numerous countries in Europe, Asia, as well as North and South America, experienced a variety of calamities and disasters, such as extreme drought, crop failures, typhus outbreaks, massive floods, and severe snow storms, which all resulted in the displacement of millions of people, and the deaths of tens of thousands due to diseases and famine. In Argentina, a newspaper called La Gaceta de Buenos Aires reported that on September 16, a great hurricane ravaged the town of Guardia de Rojas, located over 220 kilometers west of Buenos Aires. It was one of the first recorded tornadoes in that region. The disaster resulted in the destruction of over 60 houses, 21 deaths, and over 80 people injured. And because the town had no doctors or healthcare infrastructure, many succumbed to their injuries. What's unusual about this incident is that during the hurricane's passage, a strange phenomenon occurred, which according to the testimonies of eyewitnesses, was far more terrifying than the tornado itself. At 3:30 p.m., the inhabitants of Guardia de Rojas, while running for their lives from the hurricane, spotted what looked like a large snowball, or snow pebble, falling from the sky, which then split into 4 pieces. The objects flew at a very low altitude, perpendicular to the ground, and at one point, they resembled fiery balloons. Upon reaching the southern horizon and crashing, they produced an incredibly powerful gust of wind, accompanied by an intense tremor that shook the whole area. Now here's where things get absolutely weird. During the passage of the luminous objects over the town, multiple eyewitnesses saw a cart, several horses and cows, as well as a woman, getting carried away into the air, not by the tornado, but by the mysterious objects. They soared southward for several hundred feet, and then suddenly, as if thrown by the objects, they flew over 1.5 miles to the north, where they eventually plummeted to the ground. Simultaneously, several buildings, fences, wooden structures, and pasture lands that happened to be in the flight path of the objects caught fire and burned. The article doesn't say anything about the fate of the woman, but based on what happened, she most definitely died, along with the animals that got carried away. As to the mysterious objects, they were never found, despite thorough searches of the area for several days. And although the eyewitnesses clearly observed the objects hitting the ground, heard the impact, and even felt the ground shaking, no craters or impact sites could be found. According to the newspaper, many Argentinians that day thought that the end of the world was happening, and that the Italian astronomer was right. This prompted religious authorities in the country to come out, to ask people to remain calm, stating that the predictions about the apocalypse were just rumors and baseless claims. Today, Argentinian UFO enthusiasts and researchers consider this incident to be the earliest known UFO sighting in their country, and have classified the case as a close encounter of the sixth kind. In ufology, a close encounter of the sixth kind is when a UFO or alien encounter results in a temporary or permanent injury, illness, or death of a human or an animal. While most people who witnessed UFOs or encountered their occupants live to tell their tales, others are not so lucky. For some, these otherworldly encounters have killed them either at the scene of the sighting, or in the immediate hours or days following the encounter. Notable instances of close encounters of the sixth kind include the Colores UFO wave of 1977, the Mantell UFO incident, the Falcon Lake incident, and the disappearance of Fred Valentik. The phenomenon of cattle mutilations falls within this category as well, and has been happening for decades. While these deadly encounters are rare, there are more of them on record than many people might think. This case that I just covered shows that these fatal incidents have been occurring for centuries, way before the advent of the modern UFO era. In November 1823, the rulers of the Kingdom of Hawaii, King Kamehameha II, and his wife, Queen Kamamalu, commissioned the British whaling ship, Legal, under Captain Valentine Starbuck, to carry them to London. They wanted to gain first-hand experience of European customs, and seek an audience with King George IV, to negotiate an alliance with England. In February 1824, they arrived in Rio de Janeiro, in the newly independent Empire of Brazil, where they met Emperor Pedro I. After a brief stay in Brazil, they resumed their voyage, and reached Portsmouth, on May 17, 1824. The following day, they moved into the Caledonian Hotel in London, with Frederick Gerald Byng, appointed by Foreign Office Secretary George Canning, to supervise their visit. On May 28, a reception with 200 guests, including several dukes, was held in their honor. The Hawaiian royalty then toured London, visiting Westminster Abbey, and attended opera and ballet at the Royal Opera House in Covent Garden, on May 31, and the Theatre Royal in Drury Lane, on June 4, in the Royal Box. On June 21, King George scheduled a meeting with the Hawaiian royalty, but it had to be delayed, as Queen Kamamalu, as well as the entire Hawaiian delegation, fell ill with measles, to which they had no immunity. It is believed that they contracted the disease during their visit to the Royal Military Asylum. Several days later, Queen Kamamalu died on July 8, 1824. Her grief-stricken husband died 6 days later, on July 14, 1824. After recovering from the illness, the leadership of the Hawaiian delegation was transferred to a high chief, named Boki. Eventually, they were able to meet with King George IV. Shortly thereafter, the British government dispatched a frigate, named HMS Blonde, under the command of Captain Lord Byron, to return the bodies of the King and Queen of the islands to their home. The ship departed Woolwich, on September 28, 1824. The crew included James McCrae, a Scottish botanist, sent by the Royal Horticultural Society, as well as the naturalist and clergyman, Andrew Bloxham, whose brother, Roland, was appointed as the ship's chaplain. The mission lasted 18 months, and was of scientific and cultural importance. During the voyage, the ship visited South America and various islands of the Pacific, including the Galapagos Islands, and the Hawaiian Islands. Andrew Bloxham had a diary, in which he recorded detailed observations of the places he visited, documenting their diverse flora and fauna, as well as all kinds of events that occurred throughout the journey. On August 8, 1825, the ship arrived at Mauki, in the Cook Islands, where the crew collected some specimens of sea shells and phosphate of lime, and discovered new species of birds and plants. On August 10, Captain Byron tried to reach the island of Tahiti, but failed, because of very strong winds from the southeast, so he decided to redirect the ship to the Juan Fernandez Islands, and then move to the port city of Valparaiso, in Chile. On August 12, at 3:30 a.m., while HMS Blonde was still sailing near the Cook Islands, something very strange happened. A group of sailors, who were assigned as the middle watch, were carrying out their duties on deck, when suddenly, a bright light illuminated their surroundings, and startled them. Turning their eyes to the east, they beheld a very luminous body, at an altitude of about 7 degrees, apparently rising from the water, and moving towards the clouds, then falling out of sight. The object had the apparent size of the sun, and resembled a red-hot cannonball. The object appeared a second time, rose from the water towards the clouds, while illuminating the whole place, and fell again. In its final departure, the object emitted powerful rays of light, and according to Andrew Bloxham, the light was so great, that one could pick up a pin on the deck. He also added that the sighting lasted just a few seconds, and that the object made no sound at all. Some sailors claimed that at a certain point, the object resembled a ship engulfed in flames, or exploding. Andrew Bloxham proposed that the object might have been a bright meteor. Other sailors aboard the ship held the belief that what they witnessed were not one, but two distant meteors, falling into the ocean. However, when examining the description of the phenomenon, it becomes clear that what we're dealing with here is not a meteor. Meteors do not ascend and descend like that, and most importantly, they do not come out of the water. The reason why the crew thought it was a meteor was because back then, people's knowledge and understanding of meteors was very limited, so, all unidentified luminous phenomena in the sky were mostly classified as meteors, and sometimes ball lightning. Not long after the return of HMS Blonde, an account of the voyage appeared under Lord Byron's name, in 1827. As to Bloxham's diary, only some sections of it, pertaining to ornithology and botany, appeared in scientific books, and the full diary wasn't published until 1925. The story remained completely forgotten for more than a century, until the advent of the modern UFO phenomenon in 1947, and the establishment of civilian research groups, which led to the rediscovery of the case by ufologists from NICAP, in 1968. To this day, the incident remains unexplained. Chimney Rock, a high stone outcropping, located near the city of Asheville, was the site of one of the oddest series of events ever recorded in the state of North Carolina. In the first few years of the 19th century, residents around the rock reported a multitude of very unusual sightings and apparitions, one of which was discussed in the first volume of this series. It was thought that these stories began upon the arrival of settlers in the area, around 1805. However, subsequent research conducted by several folklorists and historians showed that encounters with supernatural entities and phenomena in the area predated the arrival of settlers. The stories and legends surrounding Chimney Rock trace their origins to Cherokee folklore, which recounts tales of a mysterious tribe of dwarf-like humanoid beings, known as the Yunwitsunsti, who reigned over the region for a long time. The story that I'm about to discuss is one of the most remarkable supernatural incidents that took place in the area. It goes as follows. During several evenings in early September 1811, an extraordinary event occurred at Chimney Rock. It all started with an old man and his wife, who lived in the deepest part of the ravine, opposite the Hickory Nut Falls. They were sitting in their yard, after the sun had set behind the Blue Ridge Mountains, noticing how fast the shadow of the cliffs darkened the ravine below, while the sun's rays still lingered on the tops of the cliffs. Suddenly, an astonishing apparition began unfolding over Chimney Rock, which caught the couple's attention. Two opposing armies of horsemen appeared high up in the air, all mounted on winged horses, and preparing for combat. The old man, being deaf, couldn't hear anything. His wife, however, was able to clearly hear the sounds of the troops in the distance. Suddenly, one of the warriors shouted, "Charge!" Then, the two armies dashed into each other, and began clashing. The old woman clearly heard the screams and groans of the warriors, as well as the sounds of their horses. She even heard the sounds of their swords and gear. Additionally, she could clearly see the glitter of their blades, flashing in the sun's rays. After 10 minutes of fierce fighting, one army was defeated, and retreated from the area, while the shouts of the victors and the wails of the defeated echoed through the air, until darkness engulfed both armies, concealing them from view. In the following evenings, the elderly couple witnessed the troops once again, but they were not engaged in battle. This time, their testimony was corroborated by 3 reputable men, who had been present at their house, and had also witnessed this extraordinary phenomenon. News about what happened spread quickly throughout the region, and the story of the aerial cavalry fight was circulated in numerous newspapers in the United States. Farmers would leave their fields and homes, and rushed to the village, to hear the wonderful story. A public meeting was organized, and a delegation, led by Generals Miller and Walton, with a magistrate and clerk, was appointed to investigate the place of the reported battle, interview the witnesses, and record their testimonies. The eyewitnesses were deemed trustworthy. Some explanations were advanced, but none proved satisfactory. While some scientists hypothesized that the phenomenon might have been a mirage of troops marching in the distance, the investigators couldn't identify who the soldiers were. The attendees of the public meeting concluded that the aerial battle might have been some kind of divine vision. It was believed that the phenomenon represented a time warp, revealing glimpses from the not-too-distant Revolutionary War, and that the troops were British and Continental cavalries. What the investigators didn't know at the time was that these apparitions were not a new occurrence. In paranormal circles, these sightings are referred to as phantom armies, and have specific features characteristic of the UFO phenomenon. Phantom armies are paranormal apparitions that involve large formations of human-like figures, and sometimes non-human beings, often dressed in military clothes from the past centuries. They have been reported by individuals throughout history and across cultures. Witnesses have observed these armies marching on the ground, or high in the sky. They always appear in great detail, enough to make witnesses think that what they're seeing is real, and not an illusion, like mirages. What makes these sightings even more peculiar is that the phantom troops always ignore the presence of the witnesses, and in rare cases, when someone tries to approach and interact with them, the troops vanish in plain sight. Sometimes, these armies are seen marching in complete silence, while other times, they engage in fierce battles with another army in the sky, accompanied by screams, sounds of weapons, smoke, and explosions. In some instances, their appearance is accompanied by the presence of unidentified flying objects, resembling modern-day UFOs, while in other instances, strange atmospheric disturbances occur. The duration of the sightings is always of a sustained period of time, and usually occurs during good visibility and clear skies. Paranormal researchers theorize that these sightings may be a form of time slip, which can be defined as anomalous experiences, where individuals claim to have momentarily slipped through time, finding themselves in a different, and sometimes completely unknown era, or witnessing scenes from the past or future. In the case of phantom armies and other time-slip events, people witness scenes from another timeline, without physically moving through it. This could involve seeing a historical event unfold before their eyes, or observing a future event. One popular theory suggests that time slips are a result of overlapping parallel realities or dimensions. However, some researchers are skeptical, and offer alternative explanations for the phenomenon. They suggest that certain psychological or physiological conditions can prompt individuals to experience a sudden shift in time and space, leading to the sensation of a time slip. Others propose that the phenomenon could simply be an extreme form of déjà vu, or a temporary malfunction in the brain, particularly within the areas that process time perception. That could explain why time slippers feel as though they've been transported to a different point in time. While these theories may explain individual experiences, they fail to account for instances where multiple witnesses have observed these events simultaneously. The true nature of these apparitions, whether they are hoaxes, misidentifications, natural occurrences, or glimpses into a parallel plane of existence, remains shrouded in mystery. On June 18, 1812, the United States declared war on Great Britain because of tensions over maritime disputes, trade restrictions, and territorial ambitions. In response, England ordered a naval blockade on November 27, 1812, that was implemented in stages. Under the command of British Admiral John Borlase Warren, the blockade initially extended from South Carolina to Florida. As the war progressed, the blockade expanded to cut off more ports, and by the end of 1813, it was extended to the entire length of the United States. Most U.S. warships were bottled up in ports, from which only a few were able to slip out. During the war, several first-hand accounts emerged, describing paranormal phenomena, such as ghost encounters, as well as bizarre UFO sightings, which were discussed in the first volume of this series. A few weeks ago, I stumbled upon a new and obscure story on a French website, called rr0.org, which provides a big collection of articles and materials related to the subject of ufology. The story in question first appeared in the 55th volume of a British magazine, called The Weekly Entertainer and West of England Miscellany, published in July 1815. The article, titled Astonishing Natural Phenomenon, recounts the following event. On Saturday, August 27, 1814, around 2 o'clock in the morning, while a ship under the command of Captain Hayes was cruising off the city of Boston, in Massachusetts, the crew of the ship noticed the presence of a strange figure in the eastern horizon, floating above the sea. The figure had the appearance of a man, wearing a short jacket and half boots, and holding a long stick, with a flag-like object on the top, hanging over his head. The flag had two perpendicular lines drawn on it, and resembled the French flag. As the sun rose, the figure became more visible, and remained observable, until it was obscured by the brightness of the sun. On August 28, the figure reappeared around the same time, in the same spot and posture, but its form seemed distorted and broken. The next day, the figure reappeared for a third and last time. This time, however, its appearance was completely disjointed. It remained visible for a while, then slowly faded away. Upon the disappearance of the entity, the sailors noticed what looked like 3 marks on the sun's disk, and couldn't tell whether they were distant clouds or something else. A total of over 200 people on the ship witnessed the event, both with their naked eyes and through binoculars. The article then goes on to provide an explanation for what happened, attributing the sighting to a phenomenon known as fata morgana. In meteorology, a fata morgana is an optical phenomenon that creates mirage-like illusions in the atmosphere. The name is an Italian term, derived from the Arthurian legend of a sorceress, named Morgan Le Fay. It was believed that these mirages, often seen in the Strait of Messina, in Italy, were fairy castles in the air, or false lands, created by her witchcraft, to lure sailors to their deaths. Fata morganas are a complex form of superior mirages, that occur when rays of light are bent, when they pass through air layers of different temperatures, in a steep thermal inversion, where an atmospheric duct has formed. The bending of light can produce a range of optical effects, including distortions, magnifications, and inversions of objects. In order to be able to see a fata morgana, the observer needs to be within or below the atmospheric duct. The phenomenon can be observed both on land and at sea, and is often encountered in deserts, over large bodies of water, or in polar regions. Additionally, it can be witnessed during daytime or nighttime, from any altitude within the Earth's atmosphere. Although I do agree that this is the most likely explanation for what happened, I find it strange that the man would stay in the same spot, maintain the same posture, completely motionless for hours, for 3 consecutive days. My initial theory was that the man could have been a guard, stationed on one of the nearby islands, east of Boston, but that seems highly unlikely, as the fata morgana would have affected everything on the coastline, like the buildings, the ships, and even the island itself. Therefore, I suspect that the man wasn't on the islands, and was much closer to Captain Hayes' ship. What do you guys think the crew witnessed during those nights? Was the mysterious floating figure just an optical illusion? Or something supernatural? Let me know what you think in the comments below. During my search and documentation of ancient UFO history and literature, I stumbled upon a book, titled, UFO, A Modern Problem, by Romanian physicist and ufologist, Florin Gheorghita, published in 1973. The book explores the idea of extraterrestrial life, their potential methods of communication, and the implications of contact between humans and aliens. The book then delves into the subject of unidentified flying objects, providing an overview of the phenomenon, followed by a presentation of several examples of UFO sightings throughout the history of Romania. On page 144, Mr. Gheorghita discusses the story of a priest, named Stan Irami, from the town of Cecil, in Brașov County, who witnessed something strange in the night sky, in 1812, and briefly wrote about his experience in a document, titled, Note on a Miscellany from 1788. The following is what he wrote about the sighting.
In the year 1812, a large star with many rays, kept appearing in the middle of the night, for 4 months, during the war between the French, the Russians, and the Germans. It rose and went to the east, towards the Muscovy, then made a turn, and went to the west, where its rays diminished, and the star faded away.
Although Mr. Irami didn't specify the exact date of the sighting, it is believed to have occurred sometime during the French invasion of Russia, in 1812, based on the historical context. The military campaign started in June 24 and ended in December 14. So, based on the information provided by Mr. Irami, the sightings began either in June, July, or August of 1812. Several Romanian researchers have proposed that the mysterious light observed by Stan Irami might have been the Great Comet of 1811, known scientifically as C/1811 F1, which was visible to the naked eye for over 9 months. The comet was discovered by a French astronomer, named Honoré Flaugergue, on the evening of March 25 of 1811. His discovery was confirmed the same night, by Hungarian astronomer, Franz Xaver von Zach. From May to August, the comet's position made it difficult to spot, because of its low altitude and the evening twilight. Over the following months, its brightness increased, and by early September, it was easily visible throughout the northern hemisphere, as a bright object of first or second magnitude, with a tail well over 10 degrees long. By October of 1811, it had reached a magnitude comparable to that of the stars Arcturus, Vega and Capella. As it reached its perihelion, its tail grew until it stretched across some 25 degrees in the sky. After its spectacular close approach to the Sun, the comet's orbit carried it back out towards the depths of the solar system, and it gradually faded from view, with the last telescopic observations being made in August 1812. The comet was referred to as Napoleon's Comet, because it was interpreted by many Europeans as a portent of Napoleon's invasion of Russia in June 1812, and a sign of the French Empire's victory. The comet was also associated with the War of 1812, as well as other events, such as the devastating earthquakes of New Madrid. My investigation of this case has led me to disagree with the explanation provided by Romanian researchers, and rule out the comet hypothesis. Here's why. The comet's brightness had greatly faded by January 1812, and was only visible through telescopic observations. Additionally, in early 1812, the comet was situated in a region between constellation Aquarius and constellation Aquila, as you can see in this celestial map, made by cartographer Adolf Steeler. On July 30, 1812, the comet entered constellation Capricornus. Between January and May 1812, the comet was below the horizon at midnight, so it was impossible to observe it. Even during the period when the comet was above the horizon, it was impossible to see it with the naked eye, and extremely difficult to see it using telescopes, as it had the brightness of an 11th magnitude star, meaning it was extremely faint. So, whatever the mysterious light was, it was definitely not the comet of 1811. My next hypothesis was that it could be a flare, launched by someone, either to light up the countryside and detect enemy presence, or to send signals to friendly troops. I spent hours and hours, trying to find any piece of evidence that could prove military flares were used during that time, but found nothing. While signal flares were popular in Asia at the time, their use for civilian and military applications in Europe didn't start until the mid-1800s. So, the question remains. What was that thing? I am honestly quite intrigued by this story, and have absolutely no idea what the light could possibly be. I would love to hear your thoughts and theories on this case. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, then hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you'd like to show your support and appreciation for my work, consider donating via PayPal or Ko-fi. Your generosity will help me continue making more informative content for you. The links are in the description below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.